Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is ATACS episode 11, I believe. We've passed episode 10. This is Adults Talk About Cool Stuff. We are here on April 9th, 2017 to talk about video games and maybe some other cool stuff. Who knows where this road will take us. I am your host, Flex, filling in for Paul, and joining me we have Ryan from New York. How's it going, Ryan?
It is good. A beautiful, now chilly day in the Big Apple.
Warm days, chilly evenings. Is that how it rolls?
That's about right.
We also have Will from Greenville, North Carolina. How's it going in Greenville? Is it chilly nights there too?
Yesterday was kind of cold. We actually turned on the heat for about an hour or so because it was just kind of messing us up. But
Yeah.
otherwise, it's pretty good.
I had to do that too, especially on
Yeah.
Friday. And we also have Nate from Wendell, North Carolina. How's it going, Nate?
That's pretty good.
Windeasy.
Did I pronounce it
Yeah.
right? Did I?
Yeah, you got it.
I got it.
Got it.
All right. I may not be as good of a host as Paul, but I can pronounce Wendell better than he can.
There you go. Well, I'm happy to be here on this memorial episode for our late host Paul, who has been mauled to death by a puppy, I understand.
Yeah, for our viewers out there, Paul is the recent new owner of a new puppy, and apparently that's a handful.
I asked him how he was doing, and he said something about disastrous roller coaster.
Yep.
So in his absence, we've gathered to talk about video games. I don't know
Video
if anyone's
games are
played
pretty
any
cool
video
stuff.
games involving puppies. Maybe we should make Paul a puppy simulator. I'm sure he would get a kick out of that.
Connectimals? No, that's not it.
Connect-
What's that game? Wasn't
It's
there a
like
game?
cats
That's a
and dogs
game.
Yeah,
from
Connectimals
like
is
the
a game.
90s.
Is that the one with the
also
like the
Nintendogs.
puppy on the front?
Get him dogs too.
There's also
Uh,
Nintendogs. I don't know which one you're thinking of.
I'm thinking if Connectimals has animals in it, that's what I'm thinking of.
Connectimals
animals.
is a game with animals in it, and you're
I
correct.
think there's a puppy on the front or a tiger. I
That's
don't
the one
know.
with the tiger, Skittles the tiger.
Those are
You remember
the-
that memorable E3 performance?
Oh, okay.
Bro.
Sorry. Yes. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah.
Oh. So with that, we are indeed going to dive in here and talk about video games, and I'm going to start with Mr. Ryan. Throw it over to you and ask what you've been playing lately.
Oh man, what haven't I been playing lately?
Have you been
Since,
playing Connectimals?
You got me there. You just nailed me, just straight to the heart. So since the last podcast, I have wrapped up the various games which I was playing, which includes Final Fantasy II, River City Ransom Underground, and probably most notably Horizon Zero Dawn. So I did put the remaining 15 to 20 hours in that one and knock it out. In addition to that, I have also played and finished a game called We Were Here, per recommendation from Mr. Will, and also been playing some of a mobile game called Card Crawl, another recommendation from Will, and yesterday I cracked open and started my copy of Nier Automata. So
All right.
I have been running the gamut in video games.
That you have. All right, so I'm gonna direct you a little bit here. Is that all right?
Go for it.
All right.
Tell me what you want to hear.
Yep. Give me some brief final thoughts on Final Fantasy II.
It ran longer than I expected. It kind of fault started the ending like at least once or twice. Overall, it's not my favorite Final Fantasy, but I think the combat system, and especially considering that it was originally made in like the 80s, I think it's worth playing alone for some of the things it does with the combat and gameplay.
Yeah, did you end up liking the leveling system overall, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's almost like a Elder Scrolls style thing where the stuff you use gets better as you use it.
Overall, yeah. I mean, it definitely slowed down in the back half of the game, and it had some quirks. Plus, the game was just easy in general because
Right.
of the way the leveling system worked. But that said, it was unique and fun, and I found myself like playing a couple hours of battles just to try and level like swords for one character and black magic for another character.
Yeah. Um, I asked you this offline, but for everyone else, how many dragons in boxes did you kill?
Oh man. Well, I think the depending on depending on what you count as dragons, I think some of the four hardest bosses in the game you find in boxes.
Yeah.
Some of
So
the four hardest boxes you find in the game are in bosses.
the final dungeon, there were a lot of bosses in boxes. You open a box and Tiamat box pops out
And then you kill him and he drops a box and there's another boss inside of it.
along with your Genji armor. That would be great if they did that.
Yeah. That was a weird thing about that game, how it just you open a treasure chest and it pops up on the screen, dragon in a box, and then you're in a really hard boss fight. Um, but cool, yeah. I mean, the late game it sounds like was a little bit of a slog, but it sounds like you enjoyed it overall, found it worth playing.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll have to dive in a little bit more into some of the Final Fantasies in I guess 2 or 3 weeks from now.
Yep, we will be. Um, moving on, River City Ransom Underground, worthy follow-up to the original.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a lot to add to this from last podcast because I was basically at the last fight at that point. But overall, yeah, I think I like what they did with it. It definitely has flaws and glitches, and I heard it had a kind of a rocky reception at the beginning. I can kind of see that, but I think it's sort of a faithful successor to, the 1980s ish River City Ransom.
Yeah,
So.
is it from what I've heard you say before, it sounds like it is pretty similar.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of the gameplay structure is similar. I mean, it does have some updates and some modernization, but there are probably some areas where they could have tried to modernize it a little bit more because it did feel maybe a little bit rough around certain edges.
Yeah. Is it max 2 players? Is that right?
4 players.
4 players, interesting. And the online worked pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm kind of positive for it is because I bought it to play with my brother. We had played the original on an emulator, I think, and the fact that we could, he's in North Carolina, I'm in New York, and we spun it up through a Steam connection and in no time. So that's one thing that I'm positive on. I mean, of course, that's obviously not the only thing for a game like that, but the
Well,
fact
it's
that
it's strange. It's strange in some ways, Ryan. Like what a big check mark that is in the win column. Because I kind of scour Steam for all kinds of co-op stuff. So you wouldn't believe how many times we've had to port forward and just download additional programs and so the
Open
fact
that
that
NAT.
yeah, so the fact that it actually is pretty seamless, I mean, is an oddly large check.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the rest of the game, like I said, it felt pretty faithful to the original, but new, and with enough new content and things. But yeah, like you said, well, like it's whenever I spun it up, that was a big point for me. Is like
Yeah.
how hard is it going to be, like, or how flaky is this beat 'em up connection, the connection for this beat 'em up going to be, and it was pretty much smooth and
Nice.
Yeah, that's good, and especially from like a smaller developer, that stuff can usually be a little shakier and less
Yeah,
reliable.
it can be hard.
Yeah.
which does remind me of another game I've been playing a little bit of, which is I Divine Cybermancy. Will and I have been playing some of that, and that is not a game that you can play just by spinning up a Steam connection.
I will say that everything that anyone's heard about Divine Cybermancy is true.
I heard it was very weird.
There you go.
All right, great.
I mean, we found this guy yesterday, and he had some emotional problems. But luckily, my friend Will here is a counselor, so
and we took care of it.
He was able to listen to him. He was able to listen to this guy and Divine Cybermancy.
Yeah.
Tell him.
So let me set the stage for you guys. So we're riding around in some sort of like it almost looks like Blade Runner-esque type of city, and there are these like mutant monsters running around, and we're trying to run up to an escape shaft to like close it or something to keep these monsters from like coming out. So we climb up this ladder, really awkwardly, I might add, onto a catwalk, and have to balance beam our way across the top of this catwalk, and we finally hit like a platform, I'd say about like 30 or 40 feet from where we got off the ladder, and there's a guy just standing there, and there's the sense of urgency to the situation, but I talked to him, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm feeling really bad," and we're like, "Okay, what's going on, man?" And he's like, "Well, I've just done some bad things. I'm on the drugs." And it was really kind of a surreal situation.
All the killing and raping and looting was funny. But now he's like,
"Wow,
I've got a kid on another planet, and I just want to go see him again."
It's
oh my
ridiculous.
gosh.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe we'll get into that one later. That one's so hard to even begin talking about.
Yeah, when Giant Bomb did coverage of that game when it came out, that was they had a time with that game.
Oh yeah. But anyway, Ryan, I was kind of curious, if you don't mind me switching gears, like starting from a baseline that we all kind of know. For better or for worse, I kind of dodge professional coverage a lot of times of some of the games. I mean, I'll get a general sense of the reception, but sometimes I like to somehow go into it as objective as possible. But working from like a baseline of like Assassin's Creed 2, like an open world game that we all kind of are familiar with. I mean, I think we've all kind of played that. What would you say? Are there any, like, what are the kind of similarities between that and Horizon? And I guess, what do you say that Horizon does much better? Or is that just not even a good point to start?
Yeah, and I would also, I guess, along with that, like, what kind of open world games have you played, Ryan, that I guess would be good comparisons? Because I guess I'm not sure what games you've played in this mold.
That's actually a good question, because I was thinking about it, and I mean, I've definitely played some open world games, but I've played some of the Skyrims, I've played Final Fantasy 15, but I'm not sure if I've played anything quite in the same mold as Horizon, which maybe would be a little bit more like Far Cry, where you'd have some stealth and shooting. I don't know if I'd count something like a Metal Gear as anything remotely like Horizon.
Yeah, I haven't played Horizon yet. A lot of the stuff I've read compares it most directly to Far Cry.
Okay.
From what I've played, I see the Far Cry comparisons. I think it's also in the Assassin's Creed vein, and maybe a little closer to the Shadow of Mordor sort of style, if you guys have played that.
So do I have to hunt animals to make wallets for my ammo?
You can.
In Horizon?
Yes, you can, actually.
Yep.
Gross.
That is
Far Cry.
that is something that is in Horizon.
Can you climb towers?
You can definitely do a lot of climbing. I guess
do you climb towers to reveal parts of the map and get things added to your map?
Yes and no.
Yeah, I heard that was kind of in the game, but not as big of a focal point as it is in like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, you can I don't know how much this would spoil things, but there are some of those climb this thing and it will reveal more of your map for you. That's definitely in the game, but there aren't very many of those. And I never found that necessary. Like, it was nice to have, but like I never found myself like, oh, I need to go find this thing and climb on it so I can see my map.
Right.
Like the game is pretty generous about marking on your map the kind of things that you would want to know. Um,
Are there enemy camps to take over?
yes, there are.
All right. We're checking all the boxes.
Yeah, we're getting it figured out.
Yeah.
Is it your favorite open world game you've played, Ryan?
Hmm. I would have to spend some time thinking through my list of what
Right.
qualifies as open world. It was definitely a really good game. I liked what it did
Yeah, so I
in a
guess-
lot of ways.
Yeah, I guess so. Your overall impressions, like, what are the things that you liked about it the most?
Um, so a combination of I liked the setting and I liked a good chunk of the writing. I have some nitpicks, but I didn't think the ending was that strong either. But overall, I think the setting and some of the setup, like some of your protagonists and a lot of the main quest points, are all really strong. And some of the side quest writing is at least interesting and worthwhile. It kind of fills out this unique world they've created. So in terms of setting and story, I think they did a really good job. I like the design and the aesthetics. The visuals were really nice. I like the gameplay too. I mean, I guess it kind of goes without saying. You know, I enjoyed pretty much. It drug a little for me in the middle part between like 30 and 45 hours because I was doing some collectible grind.
Yeah, that was another question I was going to ask is how long you played and did it feel like it kept up its pace the whole way?
Yeah, so I did 50 hours, just over 50 hours, and that's a platinum trophy. So that's pretty much everything minus a few very small things. And to me, probably after about 30 hours, I spent a lot of time cleaning up side quests and collectibles, and that was the part that drug the most.
Right.
And it wasn't that they were all bad. It's just after a certain point, grabbing these little metal flowers and cups and things like that, doing that for 30 of each of those items, plus some of the side quests are fairly rote, as in most open world games. So that's the part, if I were doing it again, I might skip past. I might consider doing, 30, 35 hours and just still enjoying it, but not doing all that side content. But yeah, I mean, I think the gameplay, like, they have a decent mix of stealth and like more kind of, I guess, you have some melee and you have some like archery. I thought the weapons were good. I thought, the enemies were generally pretty interesting. The robot enemies in particular, and even when I was leveled up pretty high, like they were much less of a threat. But if I just waltzed into the middle of like a huge group, like they could start kind of knocking me around and making things pretty tough. So, the game kind of kept up some of its challenge in that way too. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of good things to say about that game. Like,
Cool.
and it's not super, super, super long either. So,
Well, 50 hours sounds pretty long.
I mean,
To be fair, yeah, that's a very completionist playthrough.
yeah, 50 hours for a completionist run compared to like Skyrim or Oblivion is, I would say, short in the scheme of open world games.
Yeah, I mean, games more in the Assassin's Creed or Far Cry mold are probably around that time as well, like 40, 50 hours for a completionist run. Or
Right.
Shadow of Mordor, I think I did 100% in like 25 hours on that game. That one's shorter as well.
Right. Right.
But you're right that in general, open world games can go on for a long, long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one thing I think they could probably do with some of those less of some of those meaningless collectibles.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. Glad you enjoyed it. Sorry, Will, did I cut you off?
Oh no, I didn't want to because I get ahead of myself sometimes, I didn't want to wait and make sure everyone was done talking about Horizon before I posed another question.
All right. Go for it.
But yeah, so Ryan, who left who behind us in We Were Here? Who?
So I got the Why Me achievement, and
Okay.
my brother got the worst friend ever achievement. So
Perfect.
that game though, I mean, there's not a ton to say about it because it is what it is. It's like, maybe 2 hours long, but for a free game in 2017, I gotta say, like, I'm kind of impressed.
Yeah.
I think for a free game, that is a really impressive game.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd like to add is the creepiness level was higher than anticipated going in. I did not get from the initial look of that game that it was going to be like kind of eerie.
Right. To me, and I mentioned we played it a while ago. The part there's a part towards the end where you're basically putting together a play, and I found the directions there, the explanations, and the corresponding ways that you set up the set pieces. I found it to be kind of unintuitive to the point where it seemed like we were just guessing by the end because I did every combination that I could think of that made sense, and it never really clicked.
Yeah, that part was hilarious because like Will was the one with like the instructions and directions, and I had literally no idea what was going on. So like, I was running around punching all these things. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. None of this is working.
Turn on the blood
I don't
light.
know.
Okay, turn off the blood light. Turn on the blood light. Okay.
My brother and I did that, and he had trouble figuring because I guess he doesn't see that player can't see what he's sending out. So
Right.
that was the part. So it took us 1 or 2 times for him to figure out. Whenever I asked, "Hey, bring the king out" or whatever, he finally like just wrote it down, and he's like, "Okay, this switch brings the king out." That was the part we had trouble with, but we definitely did have to do some guesswork on the scene setup. But
Right.
that part wasn't as big of an issue for us.
We did sort of a 1 through 4 thing. So I was like, do switch 1 because I just kind of used the nomenclature that Flex jumped into, to try and do it. But yeah, I would love to see another game done like that. Those asymmetric co-ops are some of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, it was a cool thing.
I guess Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is also asymmetric.
Yeah, that's actually the game that We Were Here most reminds me of, is Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, because in both of those games you have one person performing the actions but they don't have any of the information, and then the other person has all the information but is not actually doing any actions.
Yeah. I'm sure there are a couple of more of those kind of games out there, but I am surprised also that I can't think of a ton of that kind of asymmetric co-op game floating around, because both of those games I thought were, if you have somebody to play with, like,
it's a smart dynamic for co-op. Maybe it's harder to do, and that's why there's not as many. I don't know, but I agree that I would like to see more stuff like that.
The other one that Flex and I played that I'm sure I've mentioned to you before, Ryan, is Clandestine.
Okay.
And it's a little. I'd say it's a little rough around the edges, maybe than We Were Here. But the things, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I agree with that.
But what they're trying to do is, I think, really interesting. It's a game where, basically, if you think about like Mission Impossible, there's Tom Cruise, and then he's got some dude on a computer telling him like where to go and what he needs to do,
like a handler or something.
Yeah, like a handler. So basically, it's the same thing. So one of you has kind of got an overview of like the map and the objectives and the cameras, and stuff like that. And the other one is kind of in the field. But the field player, and I've played through it both ways because I'm weird. But the field guy has got his gameplay is a little wonky.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can also attest to that
Yeah.
as the person who played the field guy. Yeah.
But I had a good time with it. I think he did. I think Fowler did too.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like, it was a very clunky stealth game as the field person, but like the co-op dynamic of it was still interesting.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna table the Nier talk because I do want to hear about Nier, but if you just started, we'll dig more into that one next time. So last thing for you, Ryan, is there anything you want to say about Card Crawl?
I think I might let Will do some talking about that because, which I mean, with Nier, I'm probably about 5 or so hours in, but yeah, I'll probably have more to say about that in our next session. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe pass it over to you, Will. So I don't want to suck up all the oxygen.
We're suffocating.
So too much Horizon and
no,
Nier.
I mean, so I've tried a couple things recently, and nothing has really grabbed me, and none of the things I've played really have been something that I felt like, I wanted to like report on. I did finish Etherlords 2 finally.
Congrats.
It took me around 50 hours or something. But
video games are long, y'all.
They are, man. But the final boss, who last time I referred to as horseshit, is no less horseshit than he was then. But I found that if you can get to a certain part, one thing I will say I'm ashamed to have done, but I net decked on the
Sounds
final
like
boss.
cheese. Oh no, it's even worse. It's
I
net
net
decking.
decked, so I figured out what deck I needed to use. But really, even with that deck, the thing that really turns the tide is about maybe 2 times during the fight, and it's a long fight. The opponent plays a spell where he uses all of his mana to have you draw cards, and typically you have maybe 4 or 5 cards in your hand. He makes you draw something like 19. And there's really no reason for him to have you do that. It's not like he deals you damage for the number of cards you have in your hand, or that you can, deck yourself or run out of cards. So there's really no reason for him to do that, other than the developers were like, okay, we made this fight a little crazy, but maybe we can't easily fix. This is all theoretical, but I felt like maybe they were thinking, well, we can't fix this, so let's kind of throw him a bone, But so I used those 20 cards he drew me to basically have whatever I needed to handle what he had out at that point, and finished it all off. But it was I liked it way more than probably I had any right to, that game. But so that was fun.
As a side question, so do you know what the community reception for that game is? Like, maybe I
don't. I mean, I know that Steam users thought it was good, but that's a metric that anybody can take with a grain of salt, really. So I don't know if anyone's got if anyone's on the computer right now, I guess they could pull up a Metacritic on Etherlords 2 and see what it was. But.
Looks like about 78 on Metacritic.
Okay.
So about an 8. So I mean, that's actually not. It sounds like it clicked with you maybe a little bit more than everybody, but
yeah,
there's definitely some people out there who are positive on it.
Play Magazine gave it a perfect 10.
Boom, Play Magazine, whoever that is. But yeah, so that's so other than that, I finished a co-op game I've been playing. I talked about it briefly. It was the Forge Quest, and that was kind of fun. It was the one that sort of in some ways parodies, kind of RPGs where you have the rival and you have to get your adventurer's license and all that stuff. I thought it did some pretty neat things. It had this crafting system where anything that you have, basically you could sort of feed it into whatever item. Like, so let's say you find an armor on the ground and you're wearing an armor and you don't really need the one that you found. there's a system that they have where there's almost a progress bar, and you can feed that armor to your armor that you're wearing to make some progress on that bar. And once you feed enough armors, you gain a level. So in some ways, basically, if you have a lower level item that has like sort of a specific characteristic about it that you really like, but it's kind of getting lower. Like for instance, like, maybe it's a level 5 item and now you're level 10 and you're fighting level 10 items, but you want to maintain that bonus that it had. You can feed some of these other armors to it to knock it up to about 10 levels higher than it started. And at that point, it stops. You can't push it any further. But I thought that was a really neat system, and I kind of wish that other action RPGs would use it.
Yeah.
Did you say that was a co-op game, or?
Yeah, you can play it cooperatively. It's an action RPG.
Neo actually lets you do that. You can feed a higher level weapon to a lower level weapon to bring it up.
Okay, yeah. So that's so I guess there's other games that do that same thing. But for me, it was the first time I'd seen it, and I thought it was a neat thing because, a lot of times you find those other items, and especially, and the neat thing is if it's a rare or an item that's like better, it'll actually give you more progress on that bar. So there's still some excitement in finding items, even if they're not exactly what you're looking for, because you know that they'll really help you push up the level of the items you already have.
Yeah.
The issues that it has, really, the main one I think is that just the dungeon design. The game consists of 4 dungeons and then kind of a final boss fight. And the dungeons, although each dungeon is distinct, the floors, which there are 7 floors on each dungeon, are really, really similar. And so we found that initially we were trying to kind of clear all the enemies on every floor, and the game got a lot less fun. So we once we started just kind of going down, as soon as we found the way down, it got a little bit better. But overall, I think it was a fun little action RPG. It has a really kind of a unique graphical style. It's called like voxel. It's like a voxel-based game.
Oh,
right.
Like a Minecraft almost, or
kinda. Yeah, it looks like everything is made out of like little tiny cubes.
Yeah. What was that? Resogun was all voxels?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, but anyway, so that was probably the thing I played the most recently that at least I felt the most positive about. And then the last thing I guess I'll mention is to go full circle to this card crawl.
And this is a co-op game you two
No.
playing? Is that right?
Card crawl is it's a mobile game,
Oh,
a
okay.
single player mobile game. And I found on Kotaku they announced that the developer behind Card Crawl had come up with a second game. And as happens so often for me, because I'm an Android user, I go and look for this game and it's not there. But the predecessor is there because games seem to come to Android like a little bit later.
Yep.
And
I've felt this before.
yeah, and so basically, kind of what it is really is it kind of reminds me of sort of a mobile Hand of Fate. It's got these it's like a sort of a, you're playing through a dungeon that's made of cards, and then you have cards that help you, and basically there are weapons, shields, enemies, potions, and then coins or gold. And then there are about 5, basically there are 54 cards in the deck, I guess, and one play is playing through these 54 cards. 49 of them are the same, no matter what. And then the other 5 are like special ones that you pick. Have I been lost? Are you guys still here?
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just, distracted by a cat. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So anyway, and basically, typically you're just trying to see how much gold you can end the game with. So sort of win. That's sort of like the unofficial way of going about it. But there are quests that you can do that kind of, the ones that I started with was one that made you bleed for a certain amount of damage, which basically there's a card called Bleed. It's one of those 5 special cards where if an enemy hits you and then you cast Bleed on yourself, then you'll gain gold equal to how much damage you took from the hit. And then I had one that was finishing 10 games with over 100 gold. That was my other quest. But it's really sucked me in. And I guess one of the things that's been so neat about it is that in some ways it's exposing me to, I think, what a lot of people enjoy about kind of roguelike games. Because every time the cards come out in a different way, and then you may have some different goals. But I've never been a big fan of roguelike games at all. And so to me, I guess it's kind of neat because I'm kind of seeing, at least with a simple framework, how I guess just how different it plays out every time can really be an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Represent.
and that's pretty much what I've been. And I think you can play with like sort of a preset kind of deck. I guess they kind of give you 5 cards, but there are maybe 25 of these additional what they call ability cards. So although they're the same 49 base, the extra 5 that you put in the deck are come from a pool of like 25 or 30 or something that you can kind of mix and match depending on what you're actually trying to do. And so it really does kind of give it each of the playthroughs kind of like a lot of variability, but you can kind of play most of it free. And then I think if you want to kind of unlock all the options, it's like $3, but that's the...
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is, as a free to play, what barriers did it have, if any, to experience the full game?
Yeah, and to me it seems like it's just a trial and then a full game. So
Okay.
I don't think it's like
so
the type
would
of
you
thing...
call it a free to start game?
Yeah, I guess that's a good way.
All right.
I don't know what differentiates that from some of the other...
For anyone
That's
not
what
aware,
Nintendo-
that's the term Nintendo uses because all of their games are basically, their phone games have been, you can play the first so many levels for free and then you have to pay to unlock the full game.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, since there's really only one quote-unquote level in this game, I guess you could continue playing that maybe with some limited options or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it doesn't seem to be, there is like what they call a daily dungeon, and if you want to do it, you can try and see if you can get a high like gold score or something, and then of course it ranks you on a leaderboard, but there's not really... From what I've seen, there's not really an incentive to do that unless you just want to see how you stack up, versus the other player. So it's not like there's only some sort of reward you can get if you play at a certain time, or if you play every day and check in, you get a super boost or whatever it is. So it dodges a lot of lame stuff like that.
Yeah, the daily concept is a very standard practice in roguelike style things, and that's what the people who like, I guess, have become experts at the game, like they compete on the daily because you get one run on the daily and like they try and do really well on the leaderboards every day.
Right. And I guess you could still do that, but there's not that would, the only incentive would just be to see how you stack up.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's all I got to say.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's I'm glad you're enjoying the card crawl. That sounds kind of neat. All right, I'm gonna if that's all from Ryan and Will, which you guys been playing more games than I have. That's some good stuff.
I do have a shout out just to do a little bit of an aside from the video games. This in the past couple of weeks, I finished watching One Punch Man, which is now streaming on Netflix. And I know we don't talk a lot about. I know we kind of focus more on games here, but for anyone who watches anime, I thought that was pretty great.
All right.
It's I mean, it's mostly humorous, but it actually has it ended up going places a little better than I expected. So just
what can a man do with one punch?
Well, this man can basically defeat all his enemies with one punch.
One punch. All right.
But
I just finished watching season 2 of Daredevil, and he needs a lot more than one punch to kill things or to beat things.
To kill things.
Yeah. So I guess for anybody who's not familiar with One Punch Man, I mean, One Punch Man is kind of like Superman in that he's ridiculously overpowered. But they play it in a funny way because he's actually really bored with being so powerful. Like it's incredibly boring to be a hero who just destroys everything.
I could see that.
So they actually go places. Like in addition to the kind of comedic through line, they kind of take it a few places that I thought were pretty good in the first season. So
cool.
Shout out.
Yeah. No, that's cool. we're open to non-video game things on here. Mr. Nate.
Yeah,
Little Birdie told me that you have finished a video game recently.
I did. I finished a long video game. We were talking about how video games are long earlier. That Zelda is a very long video game,
Mm-hmm.
or very short, I guess.
Yeah, some people
after I
apparently
finished
beat it in
I
under an
watched-
hour.
Yeah, after I finished it, I watched a 42-minute speedrun.
Nice. That's I have not finished it yet, but one of the things I want to do when I finish it is like see how the final fight differs depending on what your preparation has been.
Yeah.
How was, without spoiling anything, how did you find the final fight? Was it satisfying? Was it, difficult, easy? What?
It was very easy. I did all the shrines, so I had
Yeah,
like
for
all
the record,
upgrades.
you were a fairly completionist.
Yeah,
play of the
definitely.
game.
I had, a couple sets of armor fully upgraded. I had max stamina and as many hearts as you can get with max stamina. Lots of went in over prepared with meals to boost my defenses and attack and all that stuff.
Some steak and mushroom skewers, perhaps?
Yeah, probably some of those and some fish dishes and other things like that. So yeah, the actual final fight was kind of a joke.
That's kind of one of the things that, like, I haven't done the final fight, but that's one thing I've heard that's a little bit of a bummer is that if you do a lot of the, if you actually explore a lot of the world and do a high percentage of the stuff, then yeah, it does make the final boss kind of easy.
Yeah, it does. It didn't really bother me to have it that way because I felt like, oh yeah, like I did all this stuff, like I'm the hero. I saved everybody, then I walk in and smack down the bad guy. So that's not a terrible way to go.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
I guess the flip side of that is if you go in to the final boss without doing hardly anything, I would assume it's fairly tough.
I would assume so, yeah. I mean, if you go in literally from the start of the game when you only have 3 hearts, you probably get one shot by everything.
Yeah, I mean, and in addition to just not having highly upgraded armor, having more hearts, having better equipment, having a lot of recipes in stock, I assume completing the 4 dungeons has an effect on that fight.
Yes.
As well. Yeah.
Which I guess that's kind of par for the course for a lot of games with progression mechanics, like whether it's Horizon, unless it's Dark Souls. It's most games with progression, like you're just going to stomp the final boss if you do a completion run.
Yeah. So yeah, it didn't bother me. I thought I liked the ending just fine. I think the final dungeon is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't been in the final dungeon too much, but one thing that I've found interesting about it is that you can go in and out of it. Like, it's not really...
And it almost seems designed for you to do that.
Yeah, because I dived into Hyrule Castle in my playthrough, and I was just looking for stuff, and then went back out, and it's not really from what I can tell, it doesn't seem like a cordoned off dungeon as in the traditional way you think of Zelda dungeons. It's just an area in the world you can go in at any point and come back out of as well if you want.
Yeah, it's kind of just an area in the world, and it's a pretty big dungeon.
I was very surprised because from the outside it doesn't necessarily look that huge, but I was very surprised when I went in it and it actually switches to your map switches to a dungeon map, and I was like, oh wow, this place looks huge.
Yeah. But it's free of a lot of, and if you guys don't want me to talk any specifics about it, that's fine. But
if you can save those for the spoiler cast,
keep it broad here.
Yeah, as broad as I can. It doesn't really flow like a traditional Zelda dungeon. It's a large area.
I mean, I would say nothing in this game flows like a traditional Zelda dungeon.
That's definitely true. But yeah, they give you those quests, a couple of side quests. I guess they don't give them to you, but they're pretty easy to find. You get a couple of side quests early on that are like, hey, maybe if you go in the castle, you can find some cool stuff. And it's like, oh, so this is an area you can go into and get something out of it and then go back to your adventuring. And there's some other things about it that I won't necessarily say here, but it's an interesting area. I'll be interested to talk to you guys more about it after you've done it. But I thought that it was a neat lead up and an interesting way to do a final dungeon, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious how that's going to go when I get there as well. Yeah, so other than the final dungeon, anything else? I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about Zelda on here, but
Yeah.
any like other kind of things that stood out or closing remarks from your time with the game?
Yeah, I mean, my opinions haven't really changed on
Okay.
that game. It's really
So,
just fantastic through and through.
yeah, I mean, obviously it's too early to really say stuff like this, but do you think like all the heaps of praise it's getting is warranted? And like, do you have any idea for you personally? Like, would you consider it in the conversation of your favorite games, or it might be too early to really, you might still be digesting a lot of that stuff, but
I think it's pretty safe to say that it deserves the praise for sure. And I did just finish it, but I've been playing it for like a month.
right. Do you know what your time was, perchance?
I haven't checked. I should look. It was probably. I'm sure the Switch says it's over 100 hours. I don't know
Right.
exactly what it was, but
Yeah, the Switch kind of gives a rough time thing.
yeah,
for
it
games.
usually says like, oh, more than
Yeah.
115 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you the actual timer
Exact
on it.
number,
And,
yeah.
and I left it idling a lot, but
Yeah, I have a lot. I know I have a lot of idle time for me.
yeah, I would be surprised if even a year from now I don't consider this one of my favorites
Yeah.
of video games. Like it's just so good through and through.
Yeah. And I know you're a big Zelda fan in
Yeah,
general. Are you happy with this change of direction?
absolutely. I wouldn't say that I never want them to go back to a more linear, more dungeon crawler focused kind of Zelda game. Like I still think there's value in that. So if they literally followed this up with the same formula and never went back to the other style, I might be a little bummed. But
Right.
I absolutely love this game, and I'm very happy that they tried something so ambitious and really hit it out of the park.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like we're at a point where I was listening to the Bombcast this week, and it was like, I think Jeff and maybe somebody else was like, yeah, it's like I haven't really played anything. It's just more Zelda.
Yeah.
I feel like we're at that point for like
Yeah.
the past couple weeks where if you're playing Zelda, then you're still playing it after like a month and a half. And
Yeah.
if you're not playing Zelda, you're like trying to close your ears and like skip podcasts and make sure nobody spoils it for you.
I do
Yeah,
have something else I can talk about briefly if you guys are
Well,
interested.
I'll bring up my Zelda before
Yeah.
we move on from Zelda, because that's all I've been playing as well. It's just more Zelda. My hope is by the next time we podcast, I'll be done with it and we can stop boring you guys with Zelda. Also, for the record, next week we are going to do a special Zelda spoiler cast, so that'll should be our final big dump for Zelda, and where we can get into more of the details. But yeah, I mean, I've still been playing. I feel like I'm nearing the home stretch. I'm kind of entering the area where the fourth dungeon is, and kind of once I explore those regions, I'll then be going on to the final boss. I only have really like one or two points of like things I've kind of noticed as I've kept playing, that I'll add, and then we'll move on. One thing we haven't really talked about a whole lot is like kind of the artistic side of this game,
Yeah.
because I think from like an audiovisual standpoint, it's actually really impressive. Like,
It's really strong, yeah.
yeah, like I think like the art style of the game is really striking, and like I frequently in that game stop and look around and I'm like, wow, this is just gorgeous.
Yep.
And like the Switch is not a technical powerhouse, but what they have done with their art is Like, there's just a lot of just great environments in that game, and there's a lot of variety in the environments too. Like, it really ranges pretty much anything you could think of.
Yeah.
And then musically, the music is interesting because it's actually, and this actually goes in hand with like the world design too, is the music is actually very sparse. There's a lot of times in that where that game is just there's just no music, and they just leave it up to just you're just hearing the wind or the grass blowing and things like that, or water, a stream running by. And then with the world design, like it also, for as dense as that world is, there's also just like a lot of open space.
Yeah.
So the game does, I think, a really good job of just like creating this melancholy feel a lot of the times, where it's just like I'm just out in this field and the wind's blowing and like the sun's rising over this mountain and it looks really pretty, and like it does a really good job at just like putting you in that place and being in that world.
Yeah, it can feel like a little lonely sometimes when you're out exploring, but also like peaceful in a way.
Yeah,
it's a good vibe that game gives off, because you never feel like, well, I guess occasionally, but I didn't often feel like the game was trying to like give me this happy-go-lucky vibe.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really the way the world presents itself.
No,
but
it's also not really like
it's not
dire
oppressive
and dark either.
Yeah. So it's cool.
Yeah. It's got a really neat tone to it that I think is also a different tone from previous Zelda games.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention is like that world's really big, and like we've obviously talked about the climbing and other stuff a lot, but I think the glider is like that game's secret ingredient.
Yeah.
Because like for how many things you climb and like how much stuff there is to explore, like that glider makes getting around so much easier.
Yeah.
If you think of like other games where you climb stuff and it's like, okay, now I have to just climb back down or like find some way around, like the glider makes it really easy and also really fun. Like I think the glider's fun to use.
Yeah.
So
like, they make it simple and fun to just get around quickly.
Should I ask when you get the glider, or is that like something?
It's very early.
Okay.
Yeah. So the opening section of that game, you're on a plateau. This is all like within the first hour. And you get 4 abilities in the game, and those are your 4 abilities the whole game. And you have to do those, and when you do those 4 shrines, you get the glider, and the glider is what allows you to leave that introductory tutorial plateau. So that's kind of the opening of the game.
And then you have all the core abilities that you'll get in the game.
Yeah.
At that point, and then you can go kill Ganon.
Yep, if you want to. If you really want to.
You glide down and kill Ganon.
So yeah, I when I finished it, I jumped back into Horizon, and I haven't played enough of that yet to say anything else about it. But the first thing that happened when I started that game was like, I really wish I had this glider, because I like climbed up on something and picked something up, and then was just looking around, and I was like, oh, okay, I want to go over there, and then like jumped off and died, like falling off of just like, where's my glider?
Yeah. So I am really curious. So I'm guessing Horizon's the other game you've been playing.
A little bit, and then there's one other quick thing I can touch on, but
I wonder if you guys would dig on like the Crackdown or like the Saints Row style, where your character basically has superpowers and he can like jump and use his body to glide and stuff like that.
Yeah, Saints Row does make it. Yeah, and Far Cry 4 also had a wingsuit.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Far Cry.
I didn't play Far
Cry.
Cry.
It was really good.
Yeah, so Zelda's not necessarily unique in that, but it is very important to like how enjoyable that world is to explore.
It's just the ease with which you can go from point A to B in Zelda, and like you never have to like look around and look for the paths that you're supposed to take. You just do it.
Yeah, it's never a hassle. Like it's like sometimes when I would play like Skyrim or something, I'd be like, oh, I want to go into this place I can see in the distance, and it's like, well, all right, I'm gonna have like you start thinking of like all the hurdles to get there, or at least I do, and like how like just think how clumsy it is to like shimmy up slopes in that game. And like Zelda just makes, whether you're climbing up or down, it's just a very simple, hassle-free experience.
Yeah.
Which really again feeds back into encouraging you to explore everywhere.
Right.
But anyway,
That was the one hurdle I had. Jumping back into Horizon was just like,
Yeah, so
really
I
need
was
to
gonna
start
ask, yeah, like between climbing and gliding and like all the mechanics Zelda has, going to something like Horizon, like was it like a bit of a culture shock, so to
it.
speak, or
Yeah, it was a shock. I don't think it'll be a problem playing the game
yeah, I'm
long
sure you'll get
term.
used to it.
I just have to get back into the mindset of like, oh, here are the climbing paths, and here is the path I can walk down, and hey, don't jump off of really tall things because that's bad for humans.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
So
but
yeah, I assume you'll be playing more Horizon. So and we've
yeah,
already talked about some Horizon, but you said you had one other thing you may be able to talk about.
yeah, I have one other thing, and I haven't put much time into it. It's called Rivals of Aether.
Okay.
I
If
saw
you,
that you bought that bad boy.
yeah, if you are interested in a Smash Bros. Like,
Right.
um,
And you,
Smash
of
Bros.
all of the people
Like.
I know, you would be the one who'd be interested.
yeah, I would be the one. So, I mean, that's pretty much what it is. It's a 2D fighting game in the style of a Smash Bros. So you have simple directional attacks. They have attack and special, just like Smash Bros. And then you combine those with directions to do different things, and you try to knock the opponents off of a stage. And the more damage you have, the further you go flying. All of those same staples. Um, it's interesting. It seems like there's some cool depth to it. It's very fast paced. And I haven't played a lot of it yet, but what I've played has been pretty fun. Just like learning the characters and figuring out some of the mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw reports on that and a few other games. Like, I think it was Kotaku did a roundup of like a bunch of indie games, basically trying to make Smash Bros. Style
Yeah.
games. So I guess we're now at the point where like that's where people who grew up on Smash Bros. Are making games, and like that's a big
Probably what it
influence.
is. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so how much of it have you played, and like does it kind of give you the same enjoyment that Smash Bros. Does, like kind of in the same vein at least?
Yeah, it definitely does. I've
Is it
played.
scratching that itch, I guess, is what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, it has so far at least.
Does it shoot your 2D fighter drug into the same vein?
Yeah, it's at least adjacent to the vein, close
Okay.
enough.
I was gonna say that's a tough genre, I think,
It
to
is, I
to
think.
keep alive because Smash is kind of still running as its thing, but to me, like the first couple Smashes were really unique, and because of the IP and the platform, and I think they really captured some magic. But
Yeah, absolutely.
aside from the standard franchise iteration, it's kind of like I don't know, maybe like fighting games in general is like, I mean, they're still around, and in some cases they're still big, but they're kind of in like a mature, I guess like a mature phase where you have a few big franchises kind of
Yeah.
keeping it running, and then like I think it's just hard to keep that going outside of the
For sure. And I
outside
think
of the main run.
I think this by default is already like a very niche game. It's like
Yeah,
catering
it's like
to a subset of the Smash Bros. Fan base.
Yeah, I was about to ask because like Smash Bros. I think appeals to a lot of players in part because it's so like in some ways it's Nintendo nostalgia. The game like it's so
Definitely.
baked in Nintendo's history and lore,
And this takes out all of that.
right.
Yeah.
So like I was gonna ask like what kind of appeal does it have without all of that Nintendo history?
It definitely doesn't have the character appeal. Like, I think the game looks fine. It looks nice. I think the characters are pretty bland in general.
Right.
They're all they're all a mashup of like an animal and an element. So there's like earth, fire, air, and water, and there are two different animals for each element. So there's a fire lion and a whale, and they're just kind of whatevs. I think it's just that the people who made this are very much into the fast-paced, competitive Smash Bros. Scene, and they wanted to make a game geared towards that. So that's why I said like it's a niche game by default.
Yeah.
Like it's just catering to that
It's like
audience.
for the hardest of hardcore Smash Bros. Players.
Yeah, pretty much. And
It's
I
for
think,
the Fox only Final Destination no items crowd.
yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
as a matter of fact, there are no items in this game. Period.
Uh-huh. All right.
Well,
Does it still go up to 4 players?
It still goes up to 4 players.
All
Yeah.
right, and online?
And
hopefully?
online, it has matchmaking and all that, so that's good.
How is it out fully or?
Yes, it was in early access for a while, but it just launched fully the other week, I think.
March
May I ask
28th.
May I ask how much it is?
It is $15.
$15.
Okay.
we got our
So,
guy
yeah.
plugged into Steam here.
Yeah, I'm just kind of
Well,
looking
is
through.
our Steam.
So
Steam
yeah,
informant.
it is interesting. There's 8 characters,
Just like the first Smash Bros.
a handful of stages. That the stages have 2 modes, kind of like Smash Bros. Wii U. One that has stage hazards and one that doesn't. Except for in this, as opposed to Smash for Wii U, the non-hazard stage keeps the layout the same instead of just making every level Final Destination. So I think their stage design is good. I think their character mechanics are good, and I think the online seems solid. I jumped on to online yesterday for a few matches and got completely stomped over and over.
I was going to ask how savage are the people
They
playing
are-
that game?
Oh man, they are savage. And I was just playing non-ranked. I don't even want
Right.
to touch ranked mode.
Right.
um,
I figure anyone playing this game in its first week is probably on the ball.
yeah, they've probably been playing it early access the whole time and are really, really ridiculous. I
Well,
won't spend
you're
much
probably the
more.
best Smash player I know, Nate. So if they're savage to you, then I don't even stand a chance.
Yeah, they're savage. Just to give you a flavor of some of the characters, and then we can move on. They do some cool stuff with the mechanics, sort of messing with the core gameplay for each character. So there is one character who's a bird who, instead of double jumps, can jump 4 times. So he's pretty much always in the air, and
Right.
he can do the smash attack equivalent as aerials, like while he's in the air.
All right.
So that's
He's
like,
your Kirby or Jigglypuff.
yeah, if you could do smash attacks in the air with
Right.
Kirby or Jigglypuff. And then one of the other ones is the whale's kind of interesting. He lays down a puddle of water on the ground, and then he can teleport to that from anywhere on the stage. He can attack out of it, and if he's on top of it, it boosts his attack power. So it's kind of
Alright.
like a zone control kind of character. And one of the guys I really like is a polar bear.
Of
Like
course.
like a robot polar bear.
Even better.
Do they
Can lay
have a
down.
panda bear?
They don't have a panda.
Okay, no Kung Fu Panda.
No Kung Fu Panda. And he lays down like ice that makes the ground slippery, and then he like slides around really well on the ice, so you can like charge up your smashes and slide across the stage.
All right.
There's some neat stuff. He can also
Yeah.
take the ice and like use one move if you're standing on ice to give you like extra ice armor so that you don't get knocked back from stuff. There's interesting stuff.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
think
but-
you'll like stick with it and try and dig into it more, or?
I would like to. I'm definitely gonna be playing it some this week because I'll have some extra free time this week because I'm on spring break. But I don't know. We'll see after that, I guess. Like if I want to devote time to it with all these other huge games that I want to play.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no huge games out right now.
There's yeah, it's too many.
I mean, nobody said games are long.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I don't have anything to add because all I've been playing is Zelda, which is still fantastic. So with that, I think we're going to take a short break and we will move into our news section. Be back after this. And we are back. We're going to talk about some news now. This is ATACS episode 11. I am Flex, joined by Ryan, Will, and Nate. And there's been a surprising amount of news in the past 2 weeks. Normally, this time of year, late March and early April is when games are coming out, but there's been a lot of moving and shaking going on, so we're just going to dive right into the news. First off, there was a very short-lived partnership between Gearbox and the digital distribution platform G2A, where Gearbox partnered with G2A for the Bulletstorm remaster, whatever that's called. And they got some backlash from that because G2A is not a very well-received platform for buying and distributing digital games. And after the backlash, Gearbox ended up basically pulling out of the deal and issuing some demands for G2A. And I guess before I get to the demands, I know Will is pretty familiar with G2A, so I guess, Will, could you give us like kind of a quick overview of like what G2A is and like why there's animosity towards it?
Yeah. So G2A is what they call a key reseller. So people who have keys from any number of things. I mean, the most innocuous might be that somehow you bought a game, didn't put the key into Steam, and then you decided that you wanted to, do something with that. Or, probably what happens really commonly are things like there are tons of bundles out there, So, games are always being bundled, and you can a lot of times find really insane deals. I remember I subscribed to Humble Monthly one month, and the initial $12 I spent got me XCOM 2, which would have been sufficient. For $12, that would have been an insane deal already. But then I ended up getting, 2 other games, I believe, that I was interested in playing. And so, when you have a lot of these extra keys, the idea behind G2A is, well, let's see if there's somebody who actually wants these games out there and try and get it to them. Now, the 2 big issues, I think, or the 2 issues that come to mind immediately for me are some people have raised some concerns about, where all these keys come from. Because some of them, may not come from Humble Bundle. Some may be, keys that perhaps were given to, I don't know, reviewers or given as gifts, or some might even be, stolen. Let's say you open up I don't know exactly how this theft happens, but the idea is that some of the publishers who have tried to work with G2A, I think one of the big stories, if anyone's interested in looking into it, is Punch Club. When Punch Club came out, and it was kind of a big deal, sort of a boxing simulator on Steam, there were a slew of stolen or fake keys that were posted on G2A, and I believe the developer tried to get in touch with them to try and nip this in the bud, and G2A did not necessarily help. Now, another thing is whenever you buy a game on G2A, there's something called G2A Shield that you can pay for. Typically, it's an extra $2 or $3, but this is supposedly your security. So let's say you buy a bad key or a key that doesn't work. Apparently, this shield that you've paid extra for, it's like your insurance that your game will work, will apparently put you in the clear to like get a refund or something.
Yeah, so that's kind of like they have a platform that is very makes it very easy for people to commit fraud, and then they sell fraud protection separately, and I think that kind of combines to make one of the big sticking points.
Right. And so, I've purchased a couple things off of it. I've actually never used the Shield, and I've never had any problems with any of the games that I've bought off there. And I've actually sold a couple games on there as well, things that I got like in a Humble Monthly bundle that I didn't want. So, my experience hasn't been bad, but I can easily see how with the framework it's set up that it could go sour. At the same time, I think it would be interesting just to hear some opinions. I don't know if Ryan, you or Nate have used the service before, or if you think that the idea of a key reseller is good, just the way it's put in practice here is bad. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on basically G2A as a business.
I haven't used one. I don't know enough about it to really have an opinion on their specific business. I've always gotten the sense that key resellers are a little shady, and so I've just never really looked into it. But
right.
That could totally be like me just getting that vibe from elsewhere on the internet and that not being a real thing.
Well, it's a consensus. I mean, one thing that Flex mentioned to me a while ago is when you think about, for instance, GameStop selling used games.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, that's a sale the publisher's not getting, or the publisher developer's not getting any kickback really from that. It's just GameStop. So,
Right.
but I don't know. I mean, there's of course GameStop doesn't offer you. I mean, they offer this situation where you can return your game within 7 days if it doesn't play.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure that without the quote unquote shield, that's something G2A does.
Yeah, I don't know. Uh, I have mixed feelings about these sellers. Like I buy games from I think CD Keys and Win Games, who might do some of the, whether it's bulk distribution or who knows what they do. But at the same time, I also try to avoid some of those sellers. Like I think Green Man Gaming is one that has a bit of a bad reputation as possibly kind of stiffing the publishers and developers. And then on actually selling keys, that's even a bigger thing because if Humble, like if everybody goes and sells all their Humble keys and like completely destroys those games, like what if it makes that platform completely unappealing to to game publishers? They just say, okay, well, if I put my game on Humble, there will be some people who enthusiastically buy it to support charity, but then, there are also going to be all these other people who own my game or who already own my game or who don't care about my game, and they're just going to go dump their keys like on a key reseller. Like, I don't know, that could be a bad thing for the market. Like it could have.
Well, I guess a couple things come to mind. For one, it's not guaranteed that it'll get a sale. I mean, if you don't want to play it, there may be a chance that no one else does either. And also, it kind of depends on what your price point is there. There's also other bundle sellers other than Humble, although Humble has typically the best games and is probably the most well known.
Yeah. I mean, there's like Bundle Stars and
some of these other ones.
Yeah, it's an interesting and ongoing debate because I mean, Green Man Gaming is another big one that like I've heard. I know CD Projekt Red, the Witcher people. I remember years ago them saying, like, kind of calling out Green Man Gaming, saying like, hey, we don't know where they get their keys from. We don't see any of that money. And then G2A opening up to more users. And then also, I think even the bigger problems with G2A have been dealing with fraud. Because I feel like I see a lot of customer and also publisher developer complaints about like just dealing with hassles of fraud, and apparently it's just so easy to post fraudulent keys and profit from it. That like it just seems to cause more issues than it solves. And I think a lot of times when that stuff's happening, it comes from like it allows people to post keys for absurdly low prices, so it looks attractive to people, but you may not really be getting anything legit.
True.
And I just posted a link. I guess I thought this was interesting. Rami, I'm gonna butcher his last name.
Ismail.
Yeah, Ismail. And he's always been a very outspoken dev. He's from Vlambeer. They do Nuclear Throne and Ridiculous Fishing and Loose Trousers and a lot of other pretty neat games. He's been very critical of them, and he was basically just like, yeah, it's actually, if it's between pirating our game or buying it from G2A, we'd actually rather you just pirate it. Because he was basically like, we don't get money from it either way, but if you get it from G2A, we end up having to deal with like a lot of fraud emails. So it actually costs us time, and we still don't get the revenue from it. So it's just like a really messy situation all around.
So that raises the question why anybody, like any AAA developer, would enter a partnership with G2A.
Yes, that was the really weird part about Gearbox entering this, and like that's my biggest question with this whole story is like, why did they even enter it up front?
And I think the information on what G2A is and what it does is so widely available, really, if you're looking for it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's articles like this, like you just pulled up. I mean, I've seen I've stumbled on these not even looking for them,
Yeah. So it feels weirdly short-sighted on Gearbox's part. Like it's hard to imagine they just don't know what G2A is, or like did someone there just not realize what they were doing? Like it's just hard to say. But they pretty quickly got backlash and pulled out from it, and then the weird part of it is when they pulled. It's like, so they set up this deal with G2A to have some kind of, special exclusive thing about the Bulletstorm remaster, and then like very quickly got backlash and pulled out. And then when they pulled out, they made all these demands for G2A saying like, hey, we're pulling out unless you do these things. And it's like, make your G2A shield free, like put in all this other fraud protection stuff. And like they had this big list of demands. You can find all the nitty gritty online, but it was like a really odd move for them to like enter in this deal and then say, hey, we're pulling out unless you make these grand sweeping changes. Like, I don't know if that was like they made the deal, realized it was a really terrible deal, so then try and make these demands as like a face saving move, or what is going on. But like the whole thing's just really bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, one thing now, and this is interesting because this is I've talked to you before, Flex, about buying games on G2A and how in some ways it's been something that I've sort of beat myself up a little bit about while I was doing it. I'm sort of like, well, I don't know. I mean, in some ways it seems like a service like this should exist, but then on the other hand, is this typically the way that we want it done? Like I knew that when the Humble Bundle for February, the Humble Monthly came out, I saw a game in it that I knew I wanted, and I knew by virtue of the fact that it was in the Humble Monthly bundle that it was going to drop price on G2A. So Ryan, what you're saying like is already kind of happening. Now I don't know if it's enough that people are willing to buy it on G2A, or that the developers of these games are going to see a decrease in sales, but it's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see where all that goes. Who knows what the future holds for G2A and those kind of services, but that's clearly only becoming like a more prominent, like, I mean, online distribution for game, like that's clearly where games are going and have been for a while. So like these kind of things, maybe it's just growing pains or who knows what, but yeah, I personally just buy directly from the source. I don't necessarily criticize people for buying stuff for a good price on those other things, but like there are definitely those issues to consider when doing so. I think we'll go ahead and move on from that though. The next story I wanted to talk about is Atlas, the developer of Persona and all the Shin Megami Tensei games. They're cracking down hard on streaming Persona 5. They have basically mandated, like, hey, do not put up Let's Play videos that go past, like, a certain point of the game or, like, a certain time marker of the game, or we will, issue takedowns, which is, like, to me seems just really out of touch with, like, the current gaming landscape. Like, people, like, YouTube is basically the biggest gaming site on the internet. Like, when people want coverage of games, they go watch like Let's Plays and stuff. Like that is just how games exist now. And like to try and put a bunch of effort into blocking that is like seems really crazy in today's world. And it's like, I mean, their reasoning is what the reasoning almost always is like we want to protect, quote unquote, protect people from spoilers. But like if someone's seeking out a Let's Play of freaking Persona 5, like they're probably want to see spoilers.
Yeah.
And you hear all the time people saying like, oh, I wasn't interested in a game until I saw like an entire playthrough of it, and then I went and bought it. So like, I don't know that they would have hard evidence of Let's Plays like hindering sales either. Like the whole thing just seems really bizarre.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what they were thinking with this. Really, like you said, this seems really out of touch in a world where a lot of people watch videos of full playthroughs, like you said, even of games before they decide to buy it. And that's just part of their purchasing decision, and that's just a thing that a lot of people do when they're very conservative with their money, or if they're like in high school and don't have very much money.
Yeah.
They'll spend a lot of time playing or watching videos of people playing games and then decide the one they want to buy.
Yeah. I mean, you're around high schoolers regularly, so
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand.
You would know this.
They spend a lot of time watching people play video games, and the fact that they watch somebody play a game is, not from my experience, ever a knock against them wanting to buy the game. It's usually an incentive for them to want to buy the game.
I mean, I don't know if that's entirely true. I do think overall, like, I mean, and this is something we see, I guess, especially with Japanese companies like Nintendo is also notorious for trying to put some
they
crimps
are
on their IPs, like more than and overall it does seem like the openness of the internet has had a surprisingly, like, I guess it does have that surprising promotion effect sometimes. Although I do know people who have watched stories of games, to whether or not they anecdotally, like some of our common friends, like, will go watch the stories of games and use that either in lieu of playing the game or or will actually make an active decision not to buy the game based on that.
Yeah, I'm sure that does happen.
I know this person.
Generally speaking, I'm referring to somebody specifically.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, video games are to be played, not necessarily watched. So, like, I would think in most cases, like, just watching the game, like, it's hard to watch a game in lieu of playing it because you're not playing it. I mean, certainly some games are more story-driven than others, and admittedly, Persona games are very story-driven, but there's still an appeal to actually playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I'm not necessarily supportive of this move. I think Alt Atlas is going to basically waste their time and possibly lose some battles or annoy some people, and then it's kind of hurting them anyway, because if the game is good, it's free marketing for them to allow people to do this. So I don't think there's a whole lot for us to say here, but just generally speaking, I mean, it is a logical thing to do in a way. It's just that, surprisingly, the openness of this kind of thing actually probably promotes it more than hurts it.
Yeah, I think, like, in some way I can see them wanting, like, why someone would want to, quote unquote, protect, like, their game being, like, all of that information getting out there and that, like, just that directly. But at the same time, like, I find it hard pressed to imagine that someone's going to sit down and watch, like, 100 hours of a Persona 5 playthrough and say, well, I watched that's satisfied my curiosity, and now I'm not going to play it. But even more than that, it just seems so backwards from, like, how the internet works, because, like, people will find no matter what Atlas does, people are going to find a way to get this, like, all of that story and you know, playthroughs out there. Like, this isn't really going to stop anything. It's just going to make everything a bigger hassle on all ends.
Yeah, it's just a bad look, I think. Like, the fans want to stream it or watch it, and you're going to tell them no, and then it's not going to make you look good.
They're trying to dictate how people enjoy their product, and fans want to stream it. They want to watch people stream it. Like, that's letting people enjoy it in their way is I would imagine, in the way the internet has gone the past few years, like, would only help Atlas. I mean Giant Bomb obviously did a full playthrough of Persona 4 on their website, and they have said multiple times over the years how they got comments all the time of people saying, hey, I had no idea what Persona was, and then I watched you play the whole game, and then I thought it looked awesome and went and bought it. So, like, it's just, that's just how the world is now, for games. The only other thing I wanted to say about this is there's a really hilarious quote that came, which is just, this quote is just choice, so this quote came from Atlas USA. Atlas is a Japanese company, but they, of course, have a USA branch. So the quote from Atlas USA says, "This being a Japanese title with a single playthrough story means our masters in Japan are very wary about it." Which is just like, they're just putting it out there that, like, hey,
this was not our decision.
Yeah, Atlas Atlas Japan were being
Oh,
kind of dumb about
our
this, and we would totally do
masters
not agree with it.
in Japan. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Got it. I
Yeah.
Like,
I
look,
heard that
guys,
quote,
don't be
but
mad at us.
I thought that was like at first I missed what they were saying. I thought that was some reference to like the sensei respectful culture of like the Japanese, but nope.
Right.
I'm following. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yep. Yeah, whoever at Atlas USA wrote this clearly disagrees with this decision.
Yeah.
I'd be curious if he got any stern words about that statement, he or she. But yeah, I'm sure Let's Plays are gonna get out there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
fight that Atlas would win.
yeah. Moving on. Valve is making some changes to Steam. Um, I won't necessarily get into all the nitty gritty of this, but kind of the big picture is there are a lot of games released on Steam all the time, and not all of them are good. And it can be kind of hard to like, dig up and promote the games that are worth promoting. So there had been the Steam Curators system for a while, but I don't. Everything I read, it sounds like that didn't necessarily have the effect it wanted. So now they're adding on what they're calling Steam Explorers, which is where users can go through and play through games that are maybe not getting a lot of attention, and if they think those games are worth attention, they can basically flag them. And if games are getting flagged a lot, then they'll get bumped up in for promotion or exposure or whatever. And I'm sure there's some more nuts and bolts of like how all this stuff is working, but the big picture point is it seems like they're really giving Valve is giving a lot of power of curation to the regular users, which
Yeah, and I think that's part of the criticism, the recurring criticism of the way Valve runs the Steam store is the fact that pretty much every time there's a quote unquote step forward, it still involves like users doing the work,
Yes.
like us figuring out, either by trial and error, what the good games are. And there are just going to be some blind spots that seem to continually recur with this type of approach.
Yeah, there's still gonna be blind spots, and it also like in some ways like the Steam community is going to like as the community evolves and like certain games, it could just be promoting certain games based on like that community's preference over like even if there are other equally good games that deserve promotion. It's a weird thing.
But apparently a lot of the games that were coming out on Greenlight and then a lot of the ones that were released were, I'm a big follower of Jim Sterling, and he has this quote unquote alter ego called the Steam Cleaner. And he goes in there and like looks at a lot of Greenlight games and plays them and kind of figures out like what's worth it while and tries to sort of act as sort of a critical voice for some of the asset flips, but people going on to like Unity stores and stuff and buying pre-rendered or these asset packs and then creating games out of them. And apparently there are these games that somehow, and I don't even know how this works. I'd actually like to read about it, but apparently there are a lot of games that make money solely or almost completely solely through the trading card system on Steam. And
Right.
I have no idea how that works.
Yeah,
that would be.
I could totally see that happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like whenever you, and this is not unique to Steam, but whenever you open up things to be community driven, you open it up to abuse as well, because like you could easily envision like people in some former community like intentionally rallying behind something they want promoted. It could be for personal gain, could be for a joke. Like you could see people abusing the system and be like, okay, we're gonna all go like jointly, mark these games up or down or whatever have you. I mean, you see stuff like on Metacritic, like when a popular game comes out, it almost always gets quote unquote meta bombed because people have complaints about something, and like you give a large community a voice on things and they'll find all sorts of reasons to like kind of band together for whatever purpose they want. Sometimes it's a good purpose, sometimes it's not. But point being, whenever you give power to users like that, like all sorts of weird things can come out of it. And yeah, I guess that leads to
And
the
they
question is
have.
like,
So what
Yeah.
exactly is changing here? Because I mean, for me personally, and I mean, I'm fairly casual. Like I play a lot of games, but like I don't go digging around indies. Like, I look at Kickstarter, like, and I look for, I kind of cherry pick things I like from there. Sometimes I'll look at like Kotaku or, Critical Praise. Like every now and then, maybe like overwhelmingly positive stuff on Steam, or, I guess that stuff surfaces in their recommendation engines, which I think they aren't amazing, but they surface some interesting things, like usually some things that are getting some pulse. So right now I don't see
So
that.
here's my understanding of the main change is they used to have the Steam curators thing.
Mhm.
And what that was is if you were a curator, you could basically recommend or not recommend games. But all that really was if people followed you as a curator, they saw your recommendations. And I could be wrong on this, but I don't think the curators actually had an effect on what games were like promoted or whatever or on the front page of Steam. Like I don't think it had an effect in how they surfaced in the store. I think it was a thing where people could follow curators and follow their recommendations. This new thing is Steam Explorers, which is where users, if I'm not sure the details of if just anyone can become an explorer or what, but whoever is quote unquote a Steam Explorer, they can go play through games that are not getting exposure, and they can, if they like it, they can basically flag it and say, hey, we think this is a good game. And as games get highly flagged, the Steam algorithms that choose what's promoted on the front page will take that into account. So basically, these explorers that are going through and playing, sifting through all the games that aren't going to automatically, explorers don't need to go play the next Elder Scrolls game because of course that's going to be promoted. But like they're sifting through all the stuff that's not so obvious, and the things that get liked the most by the explorers are going to get more highly promoted. So they're basically giving promotion advantage to games because there's so many games on Steam that the hard problem to solve is tons of games just are not going to be seen by the average user ever on Steam. So how do you promote the good games to be seen? And they're kind of putting that power in the explorer's hands.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that that's a bad approach. Like, I guess if they're going with an open platform, they gotta try, or they want to try something. I mean, so for me again, like I don't know exactly what the problem is. I guess I do understand what the problem is, like conceptually, but at the same time, because there are so many, there's so many like non-indie games, like publisher supported games out there to play, and a lot of those are good and cheap. And then on the indie scene, you have platforms like Kickstarter and the Square Enix Collective, like supporting and promoting games that are particularly promising, and games with indie games with some muscle will try to get themselves out at Rezzed and these PAX, these conferences. So I feel like the games, so that I guess they're trying to find a way past all of that stuff, which is tons and tons of content that I probably won't be able to keep up with. Past all of that stuff, there's this other group of indie games, which now they're an open platform. Maybe there's some diamond in the rough amongst all the shovelware out there, and they want to encourage people to go sift through the garbage and find it. I don't think that's necessarily a problem as long as it's done correctly, but I don't see that there's a huge problem other than the fact that they're making their platform completely open, and they're just trying to make sure that there's some way for these kind of silent indies to get some exposure.
Yeah, I think the idea is totally sound, and I also know that Steam has just become this unstoppable monster at this point. It's just such a huge platform. They have developed a really big problem of there are just so many games on Steam. How do you deal with all of that mass? And I think the idea of trying to find those diamonds in the rough those super super hidden gems, and like actually shed some light on them. Like I think that's a totally noble effort. I think all of the skepticism just comes from like when you give power to, you know, quote unquote the internet, like we've seen time and time again how that can go sour in ways you would never expect. Like people will find ways to abuse that. So it just seems like, and when we're talking about like, you know, games that, you know, potentially people's livelihoods are riding on sales of a game or something, and you know, users have a big say in that. Like it becomes a really weird thing. I mean, it could end up working out great. It just right now it seems it's easy to like to be a little skeptical about it, just because like it's just hard to know how that's going to go right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's something they might have to change, and Steam has not always been the most nimble or adaptive platform.
I think it's worthwhile to think about it as an analog to other businesses. You know, like for instance, like let's say, you know, you went to and of course this might not be a good analogy, but let's say you went to a grocery store and, you know, you got some rice and then you couldn't open the box, like, and it just physically was impossible to open the box. It was like, you know, put together with like nuclear fusion, you know, like or some crazy mess like that. Because to me, like,
my favorite rice.
Some of these games that come out, like, you know, they crash over and over again, like the main menus don't work, and these are on the same store that's supposedly the preeminent, you know, computer gaming storefront, you know. And I guess the idea would be that with the type of resources that Valve must have, you know, could they employ someone to do a modicum of testing to make sure these things are not being released in like abysmal states, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess that was kind of the idea.
Yeah. I think they're kind of afraid of that is one thing I guess maybe they should be doing, or maybe that is part of the problem, is that Valve doesn't want to be perceived as like setting a bar for their platform.
Right. Yeah,
but I think
there's so many variables
though,
like that
you
in
know?
play here.
But anyway,
it's just, yeah. I mean, at the same time, it's like if Valve starts curating that stuff, then they're like kind of playing favorites in a way too. So like it's kind of hard for them to do it. But yeah, it's like I think the skepticism I have, and probably others, is like when you're giving users the ability to influence a game's sales, and that can result in all sorts of weird, nasty behavior or conflicts of interest, and who knows what else. Like the internet can rally behind or against anything out there, so like they can have power in that regard.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just reiterate my kind of counterpoint is that, you know, a lot of even indie games that, you know, if it's important to the developer or it's a really interesting product, like I see a lot of developers out on things like Kickstarter and you know, and going with Square Enix Collective and at these conferences, and like, you know, they get noticed, like you know, whether it's by a crowd or, you know, by a publisher or by like magazines and writers and, you know, online reviewers and things like that, and if it's worthwhile, it gets picked up. So,
well, at least by people like us who pay attention.
Well, I mean, but then it generates these kind of games. What my point is that if the developers are making an effort, a lot of times they will generate their own buzz, or they'll generate some form of buzz before they even pick the platform in some cases. So,
right. Though there are still, I would bet, a high percentage of players who, whether they're a PS4 player, an Xbox One player, or a Steam player, like whatever their marketplace of choice is, I bet there's still a good percentage of players who they don't pay attention to anything outside of, they just go to the store and just see what's on the front page and that's all they buy. I bet a surprisingly high percentage of players, like that's the only way they know about games.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think this is intended for those people, which is, I bet, a pretty good chunk of the market, of user base rather.
If that's true, then I mean that means those players must be content with what they're seeing on the front page, right? presumably so.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
mean, obviously
and-
there are better and worse systems. I'm not saying that there aren't. I'm just saying that I don't know if this will necessarily make or break most indie games.
Yeah, it may or may not. I mean, the thing I have heard regularly from indie developers is, and the smaller they are, I think the more true this is the success of their game is almost entirely dependent on exposure.
Right.
So, yeah, I think this is going to continue to be an ongoing issue, especially because I mean there are more games released now than ever. I still remember that stat of at the end of 2016, 40% of all games on Steam were released during calendar year 2016, which
That's
if
crazy.
you think that Steam had been around for over a decade at that point, like 40% of the games released in 1 year is insane.
Yeah,
So
I don't envy the situation. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, the Steam is a hugely profitable marketplace, and like they're doing really well for themselves and all that. But like, I don't envy them the problems that they need to solve.
Yeah. Mo games equals mo problems.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on that.
We'll move on from that one, but that'll probably be an ongoing issue in games for years and years. I don't know that any of us have a whole lot to say about this one, but it's worth noting that Project Scorpio has been officially unveiled, which is Microsoft's next console, next revision.
Yeah, I mean,
No
Question
comment.
mark?
No comment.
we did,
Moving
well,
along. Nothing to see here.
yeah, there's not a lot to say.
So in this crowd, we have what, one Xbox One owner? Is that
We have
right?
two.
At least
Two?
two.
Okay, two.
Yeah. Nate and I both have an Xbox One.
Anyone?
We both have an original model Xbox One, no S's.
Any of you considering selling that Xbox One? S1? I know somebody who did.
Are you offering to buy?
I am not. I know somebody who did sell their Xbox One.
Yeah.
I could see selling mine to get a Scorpio if I felt like that would be a meaningful upgrade for me. But
Or if you're asking about selling to upgrade, Ryan, no, I'm not. Selling to just no longer
Well,
have any
just,
Xbox One
yeah,
platform.
selling
maybe.
to not have it. And the point being is that, I think, I know you, Flex, you have a pretty strong PC, and Nate, do you have a gaming PC as well?
yeah,
Okay, so I mean, with Microsoft's move
yeah,
away from exclusivity, which I think is a great move. I'm very happy that they've done that because now I might actually play some of their games.
Gears of War 4 and Halo Wars 2. I've already used my Play Anywhere to play
Yeah,
anywhere.
baby.
there you
Yeah.
go.
So, but I mean, for this crowd at least, it's almost a moot point because
Yeah,
PS4 is my console, my gaming PC is my Microsoft platform, and that's that.
yeah. It's funny because
Yeah.
through their initiatives that are like really nice and really consumer friendly, they have really de-incentivized people from buying their console.
Well,
Yeah.
and it was probably because their console wasn't doing.
Yeah,
that.
that's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
But it
I
is
mean,
an
it
interesting
is a very
situation.
consumer friendly thing, and I'm like the way they try and position it is they're letting people play games where and how they want to, which
Which they
makes
do.
sense,
They're incentivizing people to buy their games.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who still, I mean, despite building, I mean, I would argue if you're really into games, you should just learn how to acquire and unless you're broke. But I mean, it's not like consoles are that cheap either. But
You should learn how to
like-
find yourself with money, I think.
Yeah, find some money, guys.
yeah. Well, I mean, my follow up to that is like
Mo money.
consoles aren't cheap either. So like, you're not going to be dumping $400+ on a Scorpio either. So like,
Right.
Yeah.
I was just trying to reason out the case why you'd buy a Scorpio and not a PC.
I mean, a Scorpio
Oh.
is still probably cheaper than a high-end gaming PC.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, there
Yeah,
are
it's-
some
it's-
base costs. Like to get a decent gaming PC, you'd probably still be out $700 or $800 or more.
Yeah.
Yes, you're probably going to be spending at least twice as much as a Scorpio to get comparable performance out of a PC. I mean, you get access to more games though, but yeah, they have a weird problem to solve of like to create a nice console that people would who want to play their games would buy over a PC and also over a PS4.
Yeah.
I mean, the Scorpio specs were revealed, and by all accounts, it seems like it will be the most powerful console on the market once it's out. Like,
Right.
it seems a noticeable step above the PS4 Pro, which is the current most powerful console.
Yeah.
So they will have that going for them.
I wonder
I
if they'll
wonder-
do anything with VR or supporting VR.
Yeah.
They could.
I wonder how much that thing's gonna cost.
Maybe they can make a play in that
Yeah.
direction, like somehow bundle it with Oculus or something like that, and try to help both platforms. But
Yeah, they could make
eh,
an Oculus play. I could see that being a road to go. Right now they're pushing 4K a lot because like PS4 Pro kind of does 4K, but not really, is my understanding. Whereas it sounds like the Scorpio may actually be able to display things at 4K. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I wonder who this machine's for, despite being a very powerful console.
Yeah.
Especially since, Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft doesn't have a ton of exclusives anymore because, quite frankly, they keep canceling them all. And then they're also on PC. But it's like, it's a weird spot to be in, and it's also like this is enough step up above the original Xbox One that you wonder if at some point they'll switch over and be like, no, this is our base Xbox One now. Developers are allowed to make games that run on Scorpio, but not the Xbox One. And if this ends up just being like a replacement, next generation consoles type of thing.
I mean, I think
But-
their official announcement, which again, I don't know how much exclusive developer support they have, but I think their official announcement is that developers are allowed to make Scorpio only games. Third parties
Okay.
are. First party titles will be compatible
Still be
with both.
Xbox. Yeah. So I mean, this could be. A few years ago, they said they wanted to have more of like an iPhone model where they just have, revisions every 2-3 years, and like games will support the old ones for a time, but eventually just kind of phase out, and they just always have revisions. And maybe this is a step towards that. I don't know, or maybe
Yeah.
they're just trying it out to see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. There's still plenty of questions about this thing, and going forward, how Microsoft's first-party games land is still like, I don't know, a big question mark for me. I don't think they've done
Yeah.
great work in that realm in this generation.
Yeah, that's actually the biggest sticking point for me personally. Like I've been sitting here trying to like ponder like why would someone get a Scorpio over a PC or a PS4 or whatever, and yeah, a lot of that comes from I just don't know what first party, like if you're into Microsoft first party stuff, like I mean you pretty much have to, what is it? You have to be into Halo, Gears, and Forza, right?
Halo, Gears,
Like,
and Forza. Yeah, that's the
basically
Trinity.
it.
And then
Yeah, and
they used to have
both of
Fable, but that's
Fable's
dead.
Fable's dead at this point. They killed off Lionhead
Yeah.
and canceled Fable Legends, I think it was
yeah,
called.
that
So
was it.
yeah, that's what I was saying. Like they canceled that. They canceled the new Phantom Dust. They canceled Scalebound. It's like they're just canceling all their exclusives. Like Record didn't hit that hard.
Yep.
I mean,
Crackdown is still in development hell somewhere.
There's a game called Fable Fortune that's in that is it looks like it's set in the whimsical world of Albion. So I don't know what that is, but
I don't know what that is either, but it's probably
yeah.
bad.
well, so I guess we could go kick this can of worms around like all day long, but I mean, maybe Microsoft feels like there is still an Xbox market, and in which case I would guess that the Scorpio is kind of like you mentioned, it's their PS Pro or whatever, it's their iterative replacement. And that's probably for a market of people who like games like FIFA, and things like that. I mean, maybe there is still a pretty strong console market for people who don't,
And I'm sure there are
who
people out
want
there who
that kind of prepackaged gaming console without
Yeah.
having to spend the extra $400 on a PC. Like
I
for
think so.
more casual gamers, like if they have that market, this makes sense, I guess. But
Yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who don't want to deal with a PC.
Yes.
Who want a solid gaming machine and are willing to get a console instead of a PC. And I'm sure there are also people out there who do really like Halo and Forza and Gears and all, and those things.
Yeah, I mean the PS4
I
probably offers better, but there are probably still some enthusiasts and brand loyalists out there.
I'm just wondering how many of those people there are, because most like when I think of the very casual console player who, you know, doesn't want to deal with a PC and is just like, no, I just want a console. Like, I feel like most of those people are probably playing games that they can play either on an Xbox One or a PS4. So I guess what I was getting at is I don't know what the Scorpio is really differentiating for those people, unless they just really like Halo, Gears, and Forza. I mean, and the PS4 has, especially this year between like Persona and Horizon and Neo and those kind of things, they've been really bringing the exclusives.
Yeah. Yep. No disagreement.
So, yeah, Microsoft's in an interesting spot. I'll be curious to see where all this gets them. I mean, to be fair, that machine does look like a very capable machine, the Scorpio, based on the specs. So they do have that going for them. They just need the games to back it up too.
Yeah.
Destiny 2 was announced.
Oh, nope.
Anyone have anything to say about Destiny 2?
I think that was a bad announcement.
Well,
That's about all I have to say.
I got asked by a friend if I was wanting to play it, and basically, you know, for my particular tastes, I feel like if it had maybe like a story mode that was about like kind of quality and maybe about like 15 to 20 hours, like I'd buy it to play through that. But in terms of like buying the game as service and like playing the dailies and weeklies and whatever, I feel like I've had enough of that.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Destiny. I think for what it was, it definitely had a flawed first iteration, but enjoyed it for what it was. Kind of burned out on it. I'm in a wait and see mode. I'm glad to see they've done better with it and fixed some things. Like if Destiny 2 comes out strong, maybe a month in. Especially if, like Will said, one of the things that was a real disappointment for me in the first game is they had kind of an aesthetic and a setting that had potential, but then the writing and story was kind of so sparse and vague that they just filled it in with a bunch of repetitive grind and not really much meaningful content. So even though the raids were fun and the gunfighting was fun and the loot was fun to a point, like it just was a bit hollowed out in some of the single player content.
So what you briefly threw in there that was a bad announcement, Nate. What about it did you think was not done well?
Oh, I just think it's like, oh, hey, here's a really weirdly trying to be funny cinematic trailer for your game that, you know, initially got some pretty mediocre to bad press and sort of went through a long process of like rebuilding itself and trying to appease its fans. But instead of having like coming out with a bang and like showing like, here's what we're doing, here's what we're thinking, like we're gonna really tell you why we think this is gonna be the sequel that you want, they just give you like this like really weirdly toned cinematic trailer and then say, and we'll show you gameplay in a month. Stay tuned.
So didn't win you over.
And I was just like, just go away. Like, no.
Yeah, it was a really goofy trailer. I did watch it.
I didn't like the tone of that trailer at all. I thought they were trying too hard to be funny, and it wasn't funny. Yeah. And then saying, hey, come back in a month. Like,
yeah, it was like a minute and a half trailer or something, and they like multiple times toggled back and forth between like serious Destiny stuff, because like Destiny 1 was kind of a very self-serious thing.
Yeah.
And then like super jokey in a way that didn't seem either that funny or that congruent with what Destiny has been.
Yeah,
and then they just like it seemed to toggle back and forth between those two tones like very quickly.
I mean, that's the history of Destiny, though, right? Is they never quite figured out. They had a setting and an aesthetic, but like the story,
in some ways,
I heard it was rebuilt too, right? It was very confused. It was a
Yeah.
very confused, like, empty place.
And that's what they're telling me that they're still at is just we're really confused about what we're making here. So that's what I got out of there.
So in some ways, it was the perfect Destiny reveal trailer.
Yeah, there you go. Sure, why not?
Consistency.
I just don't understand.
Check out this new confusing direction we're going in. We're trying humor this time.
Like
Borderlands, we're coming for you, just with worse writing.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't understand why you would hold that gameplay. It's not like they're gonna show gameplay and everybody's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, like this is Destiny." Like it's gonna be the same
like,
gameplay. Like
I do not give a crap about seeing gameplay. Like,
I mean,
I'm not like sitting
care
on the edge of
about
my seat being
seeing
like,
it.
oh, I can't
The
wait for the
gameplay isn't
reveal
what
of
they
Destiny
goofed.
2.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
yeah, and I care about seeing the gameplay. I'm saying that they don't need to hold it as if it's some big secret.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's worth seeing, but I'm not like, they're not building buzz around it for me at least.
Yeah, it's dumb. I'll
It's
wait
hard,
and see.
It's hard for that franchise to build buzz for me.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
if
well,
it comes
yeah.
out really strong, I'll be happy and probably give it a shot. Otherwise, it's like, I've had my fill.
Like
Yeah,
I'm sure I'm gonna be interested in whatever it's doing. I don't know if that means I'll buy it or not, but I'll be interested. It's just like this.
Yeah.
This was not the way to start off their campaign for me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing where all this goes. I did not like Destiny 1, so I think the odds of me buying Destiny 2 are low, but it is like the continuing saga of Destiny is just a fascinating thing in a weird way.
Yeah.
The last story I was going to mention is that Mad Catz has officially closed down, the longtime maker of accessories and peripherals and controllers and fight sticks and dance pads and plastic guitars and whatever else. They are shutting their doors. I don't know if anyone here had much affinity for Mad Catz or has any other thoughts on them closing, but they are gone.
It's kind of interesting to me because, for one thing, I'm surprised that Mad Catz lasted as long as they did, because their brand, to my knowledge, has a reputation for being kind of low quality and not working. Like they basically put out a lot of really bad junk that doesn't always work well. But that said, I did learn in the past year or so, as I was looking into Street Fighter 4 fight sticks, that actually their arcade stick department, they make some of their arcade sticks. I think they have some duds out there, but some of their arcade sticks are considered top tier, like competing with the best.
Yeah, that was their claim to fame, is like Mad Catz kind of had a reputation for making really crappy stuff for a long time, and then when Street Fighter 4 came out, they apparently made like the most amazing fight sticks for Street Fighter 4, and that kind of really put them back on the map. And then I think after that, it kind of went downhill again. So they were kind of up and down over the years with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess they were around earlier on because if you needed a GameCube controller and you didn't want to pay $50 for a Nintendo version, you might be duped into getting the $20 Mad Catz version that didn't work on Walmart shelves. But maybe with the shift away from gaming peripherals, they just haven't been able to maintain such a low quality business.
Yeah. They also, I think, had a big partnership with Rock Band 4 in making that stuff, and then Rock Band 4 did not exactly set the world on fire, so I think that probably hurt them as well. But yeah, Mad Catz is no more. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up our lengthy news section. There was a lot to talk about. To close this out, with all the games out, what is everyone going to be playing next? What's next on your plate, Ryan?
Well, I'm probably about 5 to 10 hours into Nier, so we'll see how deep that rabbit hole goes.
Nice. You gonna get all 26 endings, one for every letter of the alphabet?
I have 2 so far. They mostly involve me losing and doing the wrong things.
You're going for the speedrun ending.
You get to rebrand all your game over screens as different endings.
I think that's actually part of what the endings
trick.
are. I mean, Chrono Trigger, one of its 13 endings.
Yep.
At least one of its 13 endings.
Anything else on your plate?
Other than
Is
that,
that your main focus going forward?
yeah, I will very likely pick up in some other things. Like, of course, probably poke around with some more card crawl, but that's going to be front and center, I think,
Cool.
for the next week or so.
Nice. What you got going on, Will?
Well, I'm probably going to play a little bit more Uplink and a little bit more of the Bard's Tale. I started that and goofed off with it a little bit.
Classic.
I'll probably continue playing Rock Band 4 every once in a while. And then every time Ron...
You can't let Mad Cats go.
Yeah, and every time Ron sits down to play Nier, I'm going to call him and ask him if he wants to come and play Divine Cybermancy instead.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good trade.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what's up.
I mean, we need to counsel more thugs.
I mean, they're getting into bad life choices, and
I mean, break out the electrodes.
What about you, Nate? I know you're jumping back into Horizon. Anything else?
Yeah, Horizon, and mess around some more with Rivals of Aether. That's probably the main focus.
All right.
what about you,
I'm gonna
Flex?
continue playing that Zelda. Hopefully, I can. My goal is to maybe finish it off before we have another one of these, so I can start talking about something else.
You said Zelda?
Yes.
I haven't heard about this one.
Yeah, it's called the Legend of Zelda.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Okay. And that one's
been
on
playing it for a
the
little bit.
on the Amiga. Sweet.
Yeah, it was originally
CDI? Is it Philips CDI or something?
3DO.
Yeah, it was originally an Amiga game, PC Engine, and also the Philips.
Okay, so that's like
so it was originally on those three
the
platforms. I
that's
think there's
the
a Neo Geo
sequel.
port later.
That's the sequel to Thunder in Paradise, starring Hulk Hogan, right?
Yes.
I think they've made some
No, it's
really
a prequel actually.
they've
Sorry.
made some really big strides in the FMV since then. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Groan.
Whatever. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, whenever that's done, I have this whole stack of really long games
Nice.
that I'm holding up to the camera that our viewers cannot see.
Yeah, that's
Look
a
good.
stack
Oh,
of-
yeah,
yeah.
wow. You're gonna have like one game to talk about for like the next. Each of those games will last you like 4 podcasts.
Yep. Well, Zelda's already. I think this is the third one for Zelda. And then probably after that I'll dive back to Neo. And then for people who couldn't see, the other 2 games I held up were Horizon and Persona 5. So a lot of really long games. But for now it's gonna keep rolling with Zelda. And with that, I think that's going to wrap up ATACS episode 11. I have been Flex, joined by Ryan, Will, and Nate, and we're going to sign off here. And special announcement: we will be doing a Zelda spoiler cast soon, so stay tuned for that. And we will see you all next time.